It was a summer night in 2019 when Jake and his friends decided to explore Harborside Beach, a place known for its eerie legends and dark history. Little did they know, this innocent beach trip would turn into a supernatural nightmare they would never forget. Jake Thompson, a high school junior, was always curious about things beyond the ordinary. His cousin, Max, was a year younger but a talented swimmer, known for his prowess in the water. Max was also a daredevil, always willing to venture into the unknown, much to Jake's cautious nature. But this summer, they, along with their two childhood friends, Chris and Tyler, decided to explore the mysterious Harborside Beach, located a few hours from their hometown of Cedar Springs, North Carolina. The boys had heard countless stories about Harborside Beach, some of them so terrifying that they could barely believe them. They were skeptical, of course, but the pull of the unknown was too strong. They packed their bags, rented a car, and set off on what they thought would be an adventure filled with sun, sand, and relaxation. By the time they arrived, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the beach. The group checked into a small, somewhat run-down hotel by the beach, an old place which seemed to have been there for decades. The air smelled salty, but there was something odd about the way the ocean waves crashed, as though they were warning of something unknown beneath the surface. "Let's go check out the beach," Max exclaimed, eager to get into the water. The hotel owner, an older woman with gray hair and piercing green eyes, gave them a warning as they left the lobby. "You boys are new here, aren't you? I can tell by your excitement. Just be careful. Don't take anything from the water, no matter what you find. The ocean here is not like other places." Jake smiled nervously. "We'll be fine. Thanks for the heads up," he said, trying to shake off the eerie feeling that was creeping up on him. But there was something about the old woman's tone that made him uneasy. Harborside Beach, with its black sands and dark waters, had always been the subject of local myths. Some said it was the site of countless shipwrecks, with the spirits of lost sailors still wandering beneath the waves. Others spoke of ancient rituals and ceremonies held at the beach, performed by a long-forgotten cult who believed the water was sacred and could trap souls. As the group of friends strolled along the beach, they passed a few locals who had clearly been there for some time. Many were quiet, but a few shared the same warning. "Never take anything from the sea." "Why not?" Tyler asked one of the fishermen who sat on a nearby bench, fishing rod in hand. The fisherman looked up from his tackle box, his weathered face full of concern. "The ocean here is different. It has its rules. If you take something from it, you might never leave. Trust me on this." Jake and his friends laughed it off, thinking it was just local superstition. But as they spent more time on the beach, the warnings began to weigh on their minds. The water, dark and vast, seemed to call to them, an invitation to explore what lay beneath the surface. They wandered up and down the shore, watching the waves break against the rocks, until the sun began to set, casting an ominous glow over the water. Max, eager to prove that the stories were just that stories, waded into the water, ignoring the warnings. "I'll show you guys. There's nothing to be afraid of." As Max swam farther into the water, the others stood on the shore, unsure of how to feel. They had heard the stories of people getting lost in the waters of Harborside Beach, but they didn't want to seem afraid. Jake was about to call out to Max when he noticed something strange, a shadow moving just beneath the surface, almost like a dark figure swimming alongside Max. "Max!" Jake shouted, his heart pounding. "Come back to the shore." Max, unaware of the shadow, waved back with a smile. But the smile didn't last long. The shadow seemed to grow larger, circling him. Max's face went pale as he began to struggle in the water. With all his strength, he fought against whatever was pulling him deeper into the sea. Jake, Chris, and Tyler rushed into the water, pulling Max back to the shore, barely managing to keep him from being dragged under. They pulled him out of the water, his face white with fear. He gasped for air, shivering violently despite the warm evening breeze. "What happened?" Tyler asked, panic in his voice. Max couldn't speak at first. He looked around at his friends, wide-eyed, his breathing heavy. There was something in the water, something I couldn't see. I felt it, grabbing me. It was cold, so cold. "Maybe you're just exhausted," Chris said, trying to dismiss the situation. "You've been swimming for a while." But Jake knew something wasn't right. The whole experience felt too real, too dangerous. "We need to get back to the hotel," he said. Now, the group returned to the hotel, where they tried to shake off the unsettling experience. They had dinner, but none of them could stop thinking about what had happened on the beach. Max was still visibly shaken, his hands trembling as he pushed his food around on his plate. "I'm going to bed early," Max said, excusing himself from the table. The others followed suit, heading to their rooms to get some rest. But sleep didn't come easy. Jake tossed and turned, haunted by the image of the shadow beneath the waves. It was as if the ocean itself was calling to him, its dark depths beckoning him closer. Around 2:45 a.m., Jake suddenly woke up, drenched in sweat. The room was freezing cold, the air thick with an oppressive weight. He looked over at Max's bed. His cousin was gone. Panic rose in Jake's chest. He jumped out of bed and rushed to the window, throwing the curtains aside. What he saw chilled him to the core. Max was standing at the water's edge, his arms outstretched as if being pulled toward the sea. "Max!" Jake screamed, throwing on his shoes and running out of the hotel. He dashed down the steps and out onto the beach, his heart pounding in his chest. Max didn't respond. He was walking slowly into the water, as though in a trance. Jake grabbed his cousin's arm, shaking him. "Max, what are you doing? Get away from the water." Max turned to face him, his eyes wide with terror. "I didn't mean to. It wasn't me. Something's controlling me." Before Jake could react, a strange voice echoed around them. It was a low, guttural sound, as though coming from the very depths of the ocean. "Return what you have taken, or you will never leave." Jake's blood ran cold. He turned to see Chris and Tyler standing behind him, their faces pale with fear. The voice continued, growing louder. "You have taken from the sea. Now you must pay." Max, his face pale and stricken with terror, reached into his pocket and pulled out a single seashell, the one he had taken from the beach earlier that day. His hand shook as he held it out. "I'm sorry," Max whispered. "I didn't know. I didn't mean to take it." Jake watched in horror as the sea seemed to respond. The waves crashed violently against the shore, as though angry at the offering. The shadowy figures, the ones that Max had seen earlier, began to emerge from the water, swirling around them. With all his strength, Jake pulled Max away from the water, dragging him back toward the hotel. The shadows followed them, always just out of reach, but ever present, a constant reminder of the spirits that haunted Harborside Beach. The next morning, the boys were exhausted, emotionally drained from the night's terrifying ordeal. They packed their bags and left the hotel, heading to a nearby temple for guidance. The temple priest listened to their story with a somber expression. He explained that the spirits of Harborside Beach were not to be disturbed, and that the ocean was not a place for man to take what was not given freely. Max, having unknowingly angered the spirits, had triggered the curse of the beach. The priest performed a ritual to cleanse them, ensuring that the spirits would not follow them home. As he chanted, the boys felt the oppressive weight lift from their chests. The shadows that had haunted them seemed to fade into the air. By the time they left the temple, the nightmare was over. They never spoke of Harborside Beach again, and Max never touched another seashell for the rest of his life. The boys returned to Cedar Springs, but the memory of that night would stay with them forever. They had experienced something no one could explain, something that defied logic and reason. Whether it was a true haunting or just a series of strange events, they would never know for sure. But one thing was certain: the ocean at Harborside Beach held more than just water and sand. It held secrets, secrets that should never be disturbed.